Hello, this is Tomasz Gruszkowski from the IFLA Pack for Digital Preservation at National Library of Poland, and I welcome you to one of the series of open webinars on digitization. This one is on conservation approach in digitization projects. Past webinars can be watched at the address shown on screen, but for now, here is Jeanne Drewis. Jeanne, the screen is yours.
And I thank you, Tomas, for inviting me to speak. I think that the most important thing to talk about is in the beginning, the selection. So
I hope you see the right screen now.
Yes, very good.
Okay, Jeanne.
Let's go to the, so thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here, and we'll go to the, when I say scan for previous scans, as you think about a collection that you want to broadcast to the world, you want to digitize it for your community, maybe for the world, you need to look first and see whether or not has that collection already been scanned. If you look for, do some sampling and see whether or not your subject area for the collection that you have picked and whether some of the titles have been already scanned. This could allow you to work collaboratively with others to enlarge the topic of the particular subject that you're looking at. So that's what I mean by scan for previous scans. So you need to do some sampling on the internet to see whether or not your topic, your group of titles that you want to scan have already been done. If not, then that's great. Now you have your subject area and you have a quantity of materials you want to scan. Oh, I should add that if you find scans on the internet, you need to look at the quality of those scans and also the completeness of the scans to make sure that those are ones that you would want to work with and to add links to. If they're not good scans, you may wish to go ahead and do more scanning and repeat that title. So let's look at the next slide. Thank you, Tomas. Okay, so internally, it's important to build a team. And of course, I have left one person out of this team. Does anyone want to raise their hand to provide the idea of who has been left out? I did this on purpose to get some group activity here. So do we have any raised hands of who is left out? Or you can think about it yourself and see, in a moment, I will say who is left out for this team. It is the curator. It is the owner of the collection. Very, very important to include. So as you build a team internally, who are the people you want to include? The curator or the registrar or the person, the subject specialist for the particular collection that you're looking at. It could be history, it could be literature, it could be science. Whoever is the expert in that subject area, you will want to include in your internal team. Do you have a conservator who works within your library? If so, include them, of course. And also your IT storage expert. Do you have someone who is the digital expert, who is expert at scanning? And then having a project manager, which perhaps is you. Hard to say on that. You all need to think about that. If you don't have all of that expertise within your library, can you collaborate with another library to pull together a team so that you have some external, some internal, and together you start as a team to develop the procedures and the process for reviewing the collection, processing the collection, making sure that this collection that you want to scan is not going to be damaged. in the process. So the answers to these questions really lead to the next steps. But building a team is the key first step to caring for the collection. Okay, so now we have our team, and I would suggest having at least having two people who review the collections. So if you're going to the stacks to look at collections, if they're all gathered together by subject so that you can just look at each one on the shelf and do some sampling. What is the condition of these materials overall? Let's look at a few. So you want to look at the stability. So for example, I have here a book that unfortunately, when it was opened up, can you see this? It's falling apart. Uh, Parts of it are separated from, from the text block. So does that mean you can't scan it? No, actually, it might make it easier to scan it. But you need to make sure that you would keep it all in order. And then after use, perhaps you could, because it opens. So its openability is great. And the pages, while they aren't attached to the text block, are in good shape. So that one could be a good, could be scanned without further damage, and then you could box it later. I have another book here with a torn page. It's been torn. Can you see the tear in it? And unless it is lined up correctly, you cannot see the text. And you see how the text is obscured because of the way the page has been put back together. But if you lay it on top, you can really check. So for pages that are torn, as you look through, you can see this text block. This text block is solid, but some of the pages are torn, as the one I showed you. Another example of condition, this is a beautiful children's book that is completely brittle and falling apart. Could I scan this? Yes, I could. And in fact, it would make it much more usable because it is very, it's falling, it's in pieces and the paper is extremely brittle. If it was very carefully done, it could be scanned. But it needs to be protected and supported. So you would want to support it with a cradle to be able to scan it. And the last example I'm going to give you of damage is a photo album. That is, oops, I got a bunch of black, a bunch of black pieces of the paper fell on my computer, on my laptop, my keyboard. This one is very damaged. You can see it's falling apart. But again, if you have a cradle and you're caring for it appropriately, then it may be you don't need to repair it. But perhaps it would be better to repair it for some, so the answers determine the next steps. Let's go to the next slide. Now, in order to scan, you need to be able to have a catalog record in order to attach all of your scans and keep track of what you're doing. So you've got, so cataloging, putting a catalog record of the title is very important. Looking at the text block, whether or not it's sound or not, but also the openability. And that is the paper strong enough to avoid damage when you're turning the pages. Now I showed you that very brittle children's book. It would require somebody very, very well trained in turning pages, very careful. Otherwise, there will be further damage. And then also, as you look through, you need to see the completeness of the text. Are there missing pages? Can you request missing pages from another library that has that title so that you can have a complete scan? And again, trying to stitch in missing pages after you do the scan is much more time intensive, much more difficult. What is so much easier is to have all of the pages in the correct order to do the scanning when you go to when you send the book to the scan station. whether that's internally or externally. And so doing that review, and you yourself and your colleague, your team that are looking at these, to look at how difficult is it to turn the pages? How difficult is it to lay the book open? How difficult is it to be able to handle the materials without doing any damage? So that's very important for what you would need to do for training, if it's internal, or what you would require in a contract if it's external. Let's look at the next page. Okay, if there are torn pages, would you want to mend them before taking the chance of somebody being rough with them and further tearing them? Do you have the training? Is there a conservator? Do you need a workshop to do simple page mending? Or do you already know how to do that? If the book lays flat, can it do that without further damage? Is the cover to be scanned? Making a decision about whether or not you are always going to scan covers and the fly sheet, the fly page, and the first page of the text, whether or not you're going to scan everything, even if a page is empty. These are all decisions that are part of what you're doing as you look at the condition of the materials. So setting up a checklist or noting down things, oh, there are signatures for these personal collections that were donated to the library. Do I want to capture that? Is that the only thing on the inside the first cover? Or do I want to exclude the covers and only do the text block? These are all decisions that can be informed as you examine the collections that you want to scan. Certainly, if there's interesting artwork that's on the cover, that can help to distinguish that particular edition of a title that you might want to be included in your scanning project. Let's look at the next slide. So now let us think about, we've looked at this. How large is this project? Is it 100 titles? What is the number, as you look through and look at the condition of the books? One of the things to note down is the number of pages. Now, while you have within your catalog record, you very likely have the number of pages. That may or may not be quite accurate for your scans. If you're going to include the cover, maybe you're going to include the spine and the back cover. So all of that adds to the number of scans. So if you note down for each of your titles, probably in a spreadsheet as you're looking at it and recording the damage, then you can also total up your full number of scans. This, of course, makes a difference if you're hiring someone, because generally you're charged by the scan. And also whether it's a color scan or whether it's a black and white. Now, the quality of your black and white you'll certainly want to test, but let's look at the question of internal and external. So for an internal project, whether or not you're doing scanning internally, you need sufficient space to process the collection. Now, space is always a problem in the library because we bring in titles and we have that. It seems to be, at least in my experience, that many libraries do not have enough space. So having sufficient space for workspace, where you can put up tables, where you're not crowded, where you can move book trucks or carriages with the books, this is very important to protect the collection. And then, is that space that you're going to use secure? If you're scanning valuable materials, rare books, unique materials, you need to make sure that wherever your working space is, that you can secure that. So you have your space. If you have a conservation lab, of course, that would already be secured and lockable. But if you're creating a workspace for processing a scan, the materials to be scanned, then you need to think about the space, the workability, and the security, and then the equipment. Are you purchasing scanning equipment or are you going to lease it? Now, if you already have scanning equipment, that's wonderful. But if you haven't and you're thinking of investing in it, one of the things to think about is how quickly new scanning equipment is developed. There's always a new product on the market that can do more. Maybe it has a better cradle for for opening the book and turning the pages, where the cradle will move up and down as the pages get turned. Those are all things to think about for your equipment, for the care of the collection, and for the processing of the scanning. So if you lease the latest equipment, then you can return that equipment after the lease time is up. And you can think about the newest equipment if you go on to do another project. But maybe the only way you can get the equipment is by purchase. In that case, you'll want to look at how the scanning equipment acts on the volumes you're scanning. And by acts, I mean how is it working with the book to avoid damage, to avoid breaking the spine, to avoid tearing, to avoid crushing a somewhat brittle page. All of those things are part of the care of the collection that you need to think about before you start the project. Because after you purchase the equipment, then it's too late to think about it. So thinking about the equipment and how it is going to treat the books that you want to scan is a very important pre-process decision making that you need to think about. And really, if the collection you have is in very good shape and it was all sewn so it all opens easily, maybe has a hollow back for its binding, and so there's good openability, those are all pieces that influence how you make your decision. So let's go to the next slide. So if you're going off-site, if you're shipping, if you're going to have a contractor, or maybe you're doing a collaboration with a library that already has scanning equipment and also has books on the same topic you want to scan. So maybe your materials are going to travel not to a contractor, but to a nearby or a library that has similar collections. So again, all of this has to, for off-site scanning, you still need processing space for preparation. You still need security. And now you have to think about security when the titles are being moved from one institution to another. You need to think about their equipment and whether that will work. You need oversight to assure that materials are checked in if they go to another location, that they are reviewed so that you know they haven't been further damaged during transportation. So one thing you can do is take pictures. We all have the capability now with our phones, with our smartphones, to snap a picture of almost anything. And you can do that while you're processing to package things and ask the person at the other end, whether it's a contractor or whether it's someone with whom you're collaborating for your scanning project, to also take a picture of particular areas. Now, when you're looking at your collection, of course, you want to mark any page with a bookmark, and probably you want to make the bookmarks have labels for torn pages, requiring mending, for broken spine, for all of the issues that you're finding in your collection. And as you do that, you put in bookmarks so that the processor, the operator who's doing the scanning, is alerted, or the person who is unwrapping the materials and preparing them in another location, they know what you have found and that they need to have particular care for those particular areas of a title that you want to scan. So it's like when you have a child and you have a babysitter. You want to make sure that your child is well cared for, and so you write up little notes for your babysitter so that they will know where um, their favorite food, the child's favorite food is, or where if there's medicine or anything, the little hints like that, and also emergency phone numbers and things like that. That's the same sort of thing you want to do for your books. You want to think of them as your valuable cargo when you have a child in the car.
Oh, we have a technical issue, I'm afraid, but Jeanne will be back.
Can you hear me?
And yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I am on my phone instead of on my computer, but that's okay.
Okay.
If I can um, continue to speak, can people hear me?
Sure. Yes,
Okay.
everyone can hear you.
Yes. Well, it's always good to have a backup plan. Um,
Yes.
so maybe this is a good example of having a backup plan, both when you're scanning uh, what is a backup workspace? What if I have an emergency? What would be my backup plan if I needed to do something? Okay, so as we look at the collections, and to see what is the need that exists for the condition of the materials. Always it is this collection, always it is the materials that should take precedent over the processing, the preparing, the procedures, the policy. All of this should be based on the particular collection you want to be scanning and its condition. And you can only know that by going through ahead of time and looking at and identifying what the problems are. So, and that would be true whether you're doing it in-house or whether you are um, shipping it out to do collaboration. Now, one of the things that I did was I sent some web accessible resources. And one of those, there are several of them on the IFLA site, also the Library of Congress, where I previously worked. But one of the nice things for the IFLA one is preparation and questions to ask if you're working in a collaborative um, relationship for scanning, where multiple institutions are doing scanning to pull together disparate or divided collections. And that's, I think, a very useful piece of material, because what it does is it helps you think about what each institution or each uh, participating uh, institution or colleague, what they all need to think about, and that you come together and agree on how you are training staff, how you're doing the handling for staff if they are unwrapping, for example, shipped materials. Um, and then also the quality assurance of scans. And what happens to the books um, after you process them, after you do the scanning? What are you going to do? Are you going to wrap them up and put them in offsite storage? Are you returning them to the institution? Are you boxing them? Perhaps you have a box maker or a way to better store the materials, because now they won't need to be used. All of those, it always depends. The collection, you are the voice for the collection. You are the caretaker for the collection. And whether or not the scan is going to become the access point for your collection is that's wonderful. It means that the physical object is now not going to be stressed with use, but the storage of that physical object for the future, in case you want to rescan, in case someone, a researcher wants to see the physical object. So the placement of that in good storage, in any restricted issues that need to be added to the catalog record for the physical, and all of those rules and policies need to be added on and thought about to protect your collection both before your scanning and then after the scanning. And I think I will close there and see if there are any questions, or if not, I want to thank so much Tomas and the National Library of Poland for putting on this whole series of digital webinars and for inviting me today. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Jeanne. Thank you very much. So I'll be just passing the microphone and camera and the right to share to Agnieszka now.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to share my work and my colleagues' work during this seminar. It's really a pleasure. So I will be talking about digitization of Tibetan manuscripts collections in remote Himalayan regions. And I guess my presentation will be very different from Jeanne's presentation because because area is so different, and practically there are not so many rules which stays the same, because every time it depends on particular circumstances, particular place, and we have to be kind of prepared for everything. So that's how our work looks like in most cases. So just to give you some introduction, so you feel what the area look like, I would like to start with the presentation and an overview of the locations where manuscripts are preserved. I have to say at the beginning that my work and my team work is never just digitization. Digitization is for us a tool as a part of our research. So because we have been working in this area for some time already, so we somehow try to preserve the manuscripts and documents which are there for scholars, for public, also for local people, because of course there are no really any libraries there in those areas specifically, and no conservators at all. So just getting back to places, and mostly they are like sky caves collections. Some books and collections are in monasteries, and some in people houses. So area I'm talking about is Mustang and Dolpo. So as you see here in the north western part of Nepal, in high mountains, and it's like two, I think, districts least populated in Nepal. So they are connected very much to Tibetan culture. So it is why this cultural heritage, these book collections are so valuable. Because it's kind of like sometimes Mustang especially is called the last bastion of Tibetan culture, because Tibet is now in China, but that little area was quite independent now within Nepal, but still the culture is preserved. So so that was Mustang and Dolpo, and then it's especially locations of the monastery in Upper Dolpo. When I had a chance to work with, I haven't told that usually I work with a team in collaboration with Tibetologists who always it's necessary to help to contact local people who speaks local languages and local dialects. So in most cases in Mustang and some in Dolpo too, I work with Professor Charles Ramble from Sorbonne, from Paris. And for the Dolpo collection of Beecher Monastery, I work with another colleague, Dr. Markus Fichbeck from University of Vienna. And in fact, they have a long project with the digitization of canonical works in within Tibetan culture. So I had a chance somehow to work with that team too for those specific areas. So the Dolpo, the area, those regions and those places are not easy to access. For example, Beecher is located in Sheipoksumdo National Park area, which is really a wild and remote area. All the district does not really have any road connections to other districts. So it's extremely difficult to get there. So I will show you in a moment some images of also from the road. It's important because it is somehow force us to think what we can take there, what kind of equipment, what we can do there. So everything has to be somehow thought thought over. So Beecher is a monastery, as you see here in the valley, and to get there, it's like about nine passes on the way, and some around 5,000 meters. So it's not easy to walk there. So it took us 10 days to get from the moment when we could fly to Dunaj, to the place with the airport, and then walk to this monastery. And here is the place. So they are quite large collections. The volumes are digitized by colleagues mostly from University of Vienna. So when I was with the team, so we did, I think, around 100 volumes. So it was quite intensive usually because it's a lot of pages, a lot of material, and we try to do usually as much as possible. On the way, it's often that we come across another collections, so which also needs digitization and preservation somehow. And sometimes it's not easy to talk to local people if we want to help. It always initiative has to come from other side, from the collections owners. So, but sometimes they also get to the point that they want to preserve something for their community. So in such case, we can start collaboration. And it's exactly like, for example, this collection in Lower Dolpo in Dotarab. As you see, the volumes are quite large. So this is totally different materials and we have when Western, like not in a codex form, first of all. So in a way, it's easier because we do not have a bunch of books, so we do not need to take this into consideration like a fourth book because those are loose leaves. However, the shape also creates some challenges because they are very large in many cases, especially in cases of canonical volumes. So, and now moving to Mustang. Mustang is very specific, is in between Dhaulagiri and Annapurna mountains ranges. So, and area is like mostly on sandstones, and as you see from the photos, and it also creates a very specific environment which we have to deal and consider during digitization, during making photographs. So basically what I will be showing you here, it's the results of a couple of projects. Two were funded by a German Science Foundation in collaboration with Professor Charles Rumble, I already mentioned. And it's one is about private and community archives in Mustang. And on the map, you see the locations of those archives here. It's mostly Upper and Lower Zognam, Geling, Dzar, and Lubrak. So we cannot know, we never know what we will find at the places. So it's our planning is limited by this fact. So it's always we come to the place and we start to talk with local people. And first of all, the most important is to obtain permission. So here is exactly one of the main, this upper, the village in between village of Te, in between lower and upper Zognam, so two archives. So it looks like this. And another project was on Mardonk Collection, which is one of the collection hidden in sky caves in the mountains. Usually, for Mustang, those sky caves are very typical. So the caves are the collections of about 10,000 human-made, which are dug into the mountains walls, yes, so near the valleys. So that's open to the valleys. So you see, and they are very difficult, you can imagine, to access. So without the mountaineers and people who have experience in climbing, it is practically not possible. So as our work was on the collection and digitization of one of them, taken out from such a cave, but the books were taken in by mountaineers. And in 2008, and there's even a National Geographic film about this moment. I was not with the group at that time, but then we returned in 2015 to scan this collection, to document it, to date it, and to properly describe it. So that's another cave, another place, but it looks usually like this. So you see in the library, you can check if you have all the pages from where you can have the missing pages. In our case, it's simply not possible. We have those manuscripts like this if they are taken out. So only what we can do, we can scan everything and then work on photographs. So it is why I'm saying that digitization for us is a tool also for our research, because otherwise it would be not possible to stay so long at the places and to work. First of all, because conditions are very harsh, and also because it would not make really sense. And also I forgot to mention that those are restricted areas, that they were closed to tourists till 1992. So tourists were not allowed there at all. This is why culture is still, and those collections are still preserved probably. But now, even if you want to travel, you have to pay the fee, the $100 per day. So for the 10 days, it's $500, something like this. So it's quite a lot. So naturally, the time we can work at the places is limited. This is why it's much better to work on photographs. So just summarizing, as I said, the digitization is for us the part of research projects. And those places where manuscripts are kept, they are, first of all, very difficult to access in most cases, and for various reasons. usually in between 3,000 and 5,000 meters above sea level. And of course, we have to plan transport of equipment and us and to get there. And it's whatever, sometimes we do it partly by airplane, partly by jeep, partly walking, or whatever possible, even horses, without a basic facility. So we do not have the room which we can use safely for. It's usually it's we have to do it within people houses, but sometimes it's too dark, so it's not possible. There are not right condition. So, and outside it's a problem because there are also typical for Mustang, for example, is wind, which is quite strong, and usually when it starts quite regularly around 10 and 11 in the morning, it's till most of the day. So we always have to find that if we work outside, we have to find the right place which is safe enough, so we do not have a problem with that we have to run and search for our pages, right? So low temperatures in many cases. And from one side, yes, the Mustang is possible to visit for all year, but when you consider the road which needs to, and safety on the road to get there, it's not so easy, and it's no more all year because there's a monsoon and roads are very often not open for some time, and it's simply dangerous. So we usually, the best time is just in between end of March and till June, and then in the autumn. So summer is usually difficult because of monsoon. So, and if we go earlier in March, it can be very cold and -0 temperatures, of course, no heating. And also another problem is dust, especially in Mustang, but not only. So that's also for our lenses, for photo cameras, but also for manuscripts. Yeah. So that's all problems with which we have to deal. And even if we wish, so we would not have a chance to do conservation, proper conservation work before. So we cannot clean the objects or anything like this. And anyhow, they will be returned to the same place. So if dust is everywhere, they will be dusted again. Another also problems which we usually have is the very contrasted light. Uh, it's because it's high, and the sun is like a mountain desert, especially in Mustang. So its sun is very strong. So the light is it's a huge contrast in between light outside and light in the interiors. And another problem is no electricity in most places. In some downstairs, in some places, yes, there's still electricity, but it's very unstable. Then we have some solar generators. Local people have solar generators or solar batteries. And then there are places without any electricity at all too. So it also creates the problem for us because we have to charge our batteries. It's difficult to work for a long time, also because of those limitations. And another, the most, I would say, important thing is permissions to access and digitize documents and books, and this needs to be secured at the very beginning. However, in this region reality is that it's never possible to really do it in advance. So it only works when, yes, we have been working for some years already, and I collaborate with people who, like Charles Rumble, who has been in the region for more than 20 years, probably. So it's only works that way. Otherwise, it's not really possible. And despite this, we always have to ask for permission and wait. So, and to get permission, usually if this archive is a community archive, so they need to gather before. Sometimes it takes one day, a couple of hours. Sometimes it takes a week or two even, or we do not get permission and we have to get back another time. So all these situations happen, so we somehow have to adjust every time to whatever we can do. So we work, we do whatever we can do, and other things are always left for later. So transport, talking about transport here, just to show you some, to give you some idea how it is. So the only planes which are going there looks like this. So they fly by visibility. So whenever the weather is it's cloudy or there's no visibility, especially that they are flying at the level, as you see, of high mountains. So they need to see very clearly. Yeah, otherwise it would be very dangerous. So in such cases, we have to wait. So it never allows to plan very precisely. Also roads. Until some point, we can go to make the trip quicker. We can go by jeep, but it's very often that 1 year this road works, another year there are some stones or it change or floods or and some the roads comes differently in a different place. So, and at some parts, it's not possible to go by car anymore. So we have to walk, and then we can carry our equipment only by ourselves or on animals like donkeys. But it's not safe to really carry photo cameras and so sensitive equipment on donkeys. So basically, it means we have to carry. Like here in Dolpo, it's us who and some local helpers who help us to carry the things. But in fact, you can imagine 10 days walking there. So equipment has to be simple and very limited, and we have to make sure that we carry only those things which we will be able really to use there. So this is Poksumdo Lake in Dolpo. It's, I think, the deepest lake in Nepal. And especially in Dolpo, which is really remote and wide, it's very often that flood or rivers change they place even until some extent. So we have to always find a way and sometimes cross those rivers just by foot. And the matter of restricted access. So usually we first of all have to figure out who is really owner and who has the rights to collection. What is also not very easy, and basically it can only be done by local people who can speak for us and somehow convince owners and explain that it may be interesting and important as a cultural heritage for the region and also for reconstructing the local history. So this is why those documents and books are really very important. And it would not be possible to do it without really close collaboration with local people and with a full agreement. So those photos are exactly from those gatherings, community gatherings, when they take some time to discuss if they really want to get us access to digitization or to do any research on their documents. They usually documents, archival documents in this case, are kept in boxes like you see here. And to open the box, they have to gather, because usually the boxes are in different houses and keys in different house. So they all have to gather to make decision if they agree, so they can open, and then it's possible to work. So this is from Dolpo, and our research there has a kind support of Tenzing Gyaltsen, the head lama of Nesar Monastery, and he somehow understands the needs of digitization, and that's the best way to preserve also. Also because Mustang was close for so, and Dolpo the same, close, but now it's more and more people. So unfortunately, those places are not really secured. So it has happened that some part of collections were stolen and some art objects too. So the people slowly start to understand that if they digitize it, so they kind of have a proof that they are owners. Yeah. So it also helps that way. But the other side of this is they also worry that if they digitize and show that their collection is there, so it's a risk also for them that somebody will come and may stole something. So that's it works like to the way of thinking, yeah, both ways. Then this is, for example, 2015. That was the year of the earthquake, which I was unfortunately there, but lucky. And that we somehow asked the owner of the collection to bring it. So this is how he did. And we basically were working in a hotel on the one room on the trying just to first of all to document it, to catalog it, and then to photograph the documents. Then for the Mardonk collection, this is like religious volumes, canonical volumes, which are much larger in size. They were kept in a monastery, so we had to talk to monks, what also was not easy and fine, but finally we were working in a monastery. And that monastery has a kind of museum, but you see it looks like this, like on the photographs. So there's not really place and chance to work in the monastery. So in the room, right? So we had to find a place to work on this. And the measures that, just summarizing this a bit, which are being taken to make manuscripts available to local and international communities is, first of all, collection surveys, then documentation, basic cataloging has to be done, digitization, the development of methodologies and tools for digitization and research, uh, just to be prepared to all possible circumstances we may experience at particular places, identification of the manuscripts, also like for the collections, what is important, maybe if possible sometimes to date the collections, because in most cases nothing has been done. Some digitization work was conducted in 80s and 90s within the Nepal German High Mountains archaeology projects, and there are microforms, but many of them are no more readable, yeah? And they are digitized already, but it's only a small part of collections which are still in Mustang and Dolpo, and probably also other areas of Nepal. And also just to prepare it for further studies by other specialists. So the methods now, from the more practical point of view, the methods and tools for digitization, we work with, as I said, with simple equipment. So basically digital camera. Usually we have at least two cameras, one more general for documentation, all the pages, and another with the good macro. The color checker is the one of the most important thing because of light and somehow unstable conditions. So it's necessary because thanks to this we only can in the post-production kind of things we can check and have a chance to improve the slightly quality of our photographs. And I work for other codicological and material features. I work with little digital microscope dinolite, as you see here, which can give additional information about type of paper, materials, the interactions of materials, and what is there. So the conservation of manuscripts into a digital form that can be processed by a computer is kind of like our goals to thinking about quality. So then so we then can maybe use other computer tools, like for example optical character recognition, which technology which then allows to create e-text from scans, or simply to work on pattern recognition or whatever. So those photographs has to have sufficient qualities for all this. Also virtual preservation, kind of copy of material object. The importance of this is why there's a it's very important to have also metadata on the material objects, not only text, and this is what we aim. And development of methodologies and tools for digitization of rare Tibetan books and documents, and especially in those remote locations. So here again, like a type of photographs, this is why it's more than just photographing a text. For example, the part of our work is usually to photograph the type of paper against light. So till some point, I tried to do it with the light panel, but of course, even with battery, it did not really work very well, because usually when there was no possibility to charge it, it did not work anymore. So, and also the sizes of documents and leaves are usually larger than those light panels. So it would be really difficult to carry such a large one. So it is why we have to somehow have ideas, which I will do in a moment. The other kind of important things, very practicalities, I would say, is to level the ground and photo camera and everything, because we work and usually on the not a even floor. It's usually like a ground, or it's very it's not stable, so we have to always find a way to prepare first, like the leveled flat surface on which we can just safely put the leaves and photograph them. As you see here, so that is how we work. And then because of shape of the leaves, we usually photograph two at once. So it works with the form of Tibetan books. When you just turn the pages, you have the leaves one by one. Then we can, in the post-production process, we can somehow separate them for the websites to show just one by one, not two at once, because sometimes they are not in order. If they would be perfectly in order, so in that such case we could leave it two at one picture, but otherwise it's better to separate them. Then we usually work surrounded by, for example, like here it was monastery patio, yes, so they were young monks and they were interested. So we have to somehow take all these things into account. We also register some other codicological features, like a thickness of a paper, for example, or some kind of measurements of layout, and just to identify books then. So it's more like research work. For the getting back to digitization, I would like to show you this example, for example, that the Mardonk collection, when it was taken out of the caves, for very quickly they photographed the pages one by one, and they were a couple of people with different cameras, and they did it in the yellow tent. So then all this part of photos are just yellow. So then, and because they are from different cameras, so from one they are more and for others they are less, but still it's not really good when you have this kind of range. So in this case, we decided somehow to make it more like a sepia or black and white in such cases, yeah, not all. And this is also how we worked. So we have to first, of course, from all the mass, they try to, colleagues try to separate the volumes. It's easier sometimes by size, but you have to also check the text if it makes sense, just to make things a bit easier than to put everything in order. So sometimes we are helped by local monks, like, or people just who want to help. And in this case, the volumes were somehow protected in the in just the blue clothes. You see, that is the only thing which was available. So, but at least that type of traditional protection, because Tibetan books are usually wrapped in clothes and put in between wooden covers. So here in this case, the covers were lost. So even they originally probably were there. So the only kind of protection is still like clothes. And as you see, sometimes it's really cold. In the end of March, it's still snowing, and it's difficult to work by many during many hours. Some creativity is necessary. Maybe it's not always, according perfect rules, but it's somehow allows to get more information. So in this case, sometimes like those photographing against light, the light is so strong that it was a similar effect just to put it across the window or just against light. This is the Gailing Village archives. So I just wanted to show that sometimes the documents are in quite good condition, but sometimes they are just totally distracted. And in this case, what we could do only just to look what part of, if there are still some interesting documents, like from the point of textual content, to really worthy to unfold and try to flatten a bit and make the photo of it. So that state of the collections also exists, but it is worthy to do it if times allows, because we found already many interesting objects in Mustang and in this kind of collections. As you see here, from it's all from Gailing. And here again, another way of photographing against light. So we did it that way. And the photos, you see more or less how they look like. So we try just to get maximum information about those objects. And this is from Dolpo and with colleague Markus Wigbeck and Jigme Lotro, who were photographing and just all pages, and I photographed the just like a specific features and all volumes and some codicological features which were important for identification of kanjurs and tenjurs, which are type of text. Yeah, here it's from the same place. And this is why I wanted to emphasize here, which is usually it's not when you work on digitization in the library, it's usually not considered and not the part of digitization project, but there is really importance of metadata on the material objects for cataloging. Why? First of all, it's usually, in our case, it's one chance access to the collection. We never know if the same collection will be exactly available next year, for example. So it is why we always try to do maximum, whatever is allowed. It happened already that, for example, like a Mardonk collection, it was, I mentioned to you already that it was brought from the caves to Chode Monastery in 2008. And then when we came in 2015, one third of the collection was lost. We never found the historical part. So this is why I showed you those photos from Yellow Tent. In fact, the only chance to preserve those texts, to make it available to people, was just to work a bit like in the post-production phase to improve the images, because we did not have a chance to photograph again the same volumes. And we still hope that at some point maybe just monks find it in some corners of monastery, but it has not happened yet as far as I know. And of course, other reasons: manuscripts are physical objects, thus pieces of information collected from materials which book is made of, can help to put a book in the context. So if we do not collect and record such information, we are losing an important evidence which may not be possible to retrieve anymore when objects are lost. And record of data on materiality can allow for comparative studies and opens many new areas of research. So, and just examples of, I will just, because I don't think I have much more time, so just showing you quickly so that what type of features we describe. So somehow we photograph all objects, but we try to do another cutouts and better photographs of seals, for example, signatures, fingerprints, which are kind of signatures in those Tibetan documents, and all other sometimes particular fragments of texts, and material features of paper and ink too. Sometimes we also sample, taking micro samples for fiber analysis to know exactly what type of paper is used. So here I mentioned the fingerprints. So documents looks like this. They are often itself in a very, because it's not only quality of photography, but it's also quality of fingerprints on the paper. We tried to identify them, but finally it was not possible due to quality issue. It's not like at the A-pores when now forensic sciences can make a perfect fingerprints. You see those fingerprints are somehow like often moved and a bit blurred itself on the due to type of ink and paper used in documents. So, but still, we do the photo of a document, we do the photo against light, and then if the sample is taken, also we identify a type of paper. Even from just side light and different lights, we can discover many elements. As in these two cases, for example, you must see a difference of type of paper. One is laid, one is woven type, and the surface texture is different. You can recover some kind of traces of preparation of surface before writing, like the polishing you see on this photo here in the right bottom corner of the screen. Yeah, and then when you combine it with the images against light, you exactly can reconstruct a technology of making this paper in this case. And we, of course, search for any peculiar and features and which would allow us to make a better and more precise identifications. And that's here I maybe just skip quickly through the research and what type of descriptions we do. What only I wanted to see here, for example, in the case of Mardonk Collection, just to show you that those are really very important stuff, and we dated it according to text, colophon, but also C14, and we discovered that this collection is dated, the oldest volume volumes from 13th century, 14, yeah, 15, then 16 to the 17th century. So it's not very recent. It's really old collection from the almost beginning history of Mustang kingdom. So this is why we pay attention also and try to collect all the information. So I will just skip that part. Also on materials, and yeah, for other volumes from this is from Lubra collection, for example, and it's always yeah, images of the same kind as I already mentioned, and also illuminations. Some, as you see even from those photos, then we always there is technical work to do before putting everything on websites and making available for further research. I also, in case if there are some sound books, I also try to document if it's possible of way of how is book structure, yeah, how the book is sewn and how it is made, just for references and for reconstruction of the book history. The current condition of the digitized collections, it's another problem. Many of pages are simply covered by dirt and dust, also birds droppings and feathers, especially in caves environment. Fragments of the collections are only available, loose leaves without binding elements, scattered folios, as I showed before. They are in most cases stored in unsecured places, exposed to fire and water damage. So there's nothing like a secure place. So thinking about if we have a space for this, I would say yes and no. So we have a lot of space, we have to find it, whatever place works, but we never have the designated special place which we can safely work. So the many folios have cavities, tears, and other mechanical damages. But they are still, I would say, with all this environment, I still think that they are really well preserved, because there's not much, in most cases, there's not really a lot of chemical damage which makes them very brittle, for example. So it's also important, and it shows that yes, they should be digitized, yeah, because the main problem is that they are disappearing. And if we want to record and somehow collect it for research, it's good to just do it whenever possible. Some rarely, even it's like a mountain desert, there are some water damages, microorganisms and fungi, but rather rare. And which is more often, it's a flaking painting layers, and that's very dangerous. So some images, how it looks like. You see, in such cases, we do not really have a time to clean, for example, such a folio. So it should be like another project for later. Maybe at some point we will get to that moment that it will be understood and accepted by local communities, that they want also to learn the preservation or conservation measures, because there's in fact no other way, like somehow teach local people. It's not really possible. Then any of us will spend like months there and try to conserve all the books. So, and I mentioned about the flaking layers. Sometimes it's just because the glue is weak already, and sometimes it's just damaged. Yeah? So like in this cases, for example. So why you may wonder why so many loose manuscripts are just left abandoned in the case. The custom of abandoning old and damaged texts in stupas, shrines, and possibly caves is known all across Tibet. There are many, it's part of Tibetan culture. There are many caves in this part of the Himalayas with manuscripts and the objects of religious cult. The reason for this is that people believe that having or maybe one of the reason, having a damaged figure or book in their home generates bad karma, so bad luck. Under normal circumstances, Tibetans do not destroy religious texts. They just place them on the floor. They do never place them on the floor or treat them with disrespect. It is why probably they somehow put them on a side. So maybe in caves, sometimes in stupas. So this is why those collections so are found there. But another like a preservation issue, and it's and kind of common sense is when if we want to help and we are taking those folios out of caves, there is a problem with responsibility for the collection because it's very difficult. Sometimes there's no owner. We don't know who is owner and to whom it belonged. And also local people usually quite often do not know, but of course there are various authorities and people in charge who has some ideas, and they sometimes do not agree with each other, so those issues should be really treated very seriously. So we need to, if we take those and try to digitize and take it out of case, we need to think about preservation, including digitization measures. And of course, it would be really necessities that some conservator or people with experience are with them. Otherwise, what happens, and you see this photo, I was not with them in 2008, but what they did is really frightening. They just, undusted the folios against the walls and stones, and I'm pretty sure that they lost quite many of painting layers, and it wasn't a safe way, of course. So just to summarize at the end, so the digitization is a part of preservation for us. It would be, I hope that at some point we will be also able to work more with preventive conservation measures, and more local people will be interested in this, and maybe to even learn some conservation treatment. What is very important also, always access to scholar and to general audiences, because it's mainly why we are doing this. And further documentation and research, so manuscript as both text and material objects, so material data are also very important. A multidisciplinary study of manuscripts collections from the perspective of their codicological features, their content, and their use in ritual performances. So those topics are all like a part of research. And with all over on the top of this is a clashing between Tibetan and Western ideas of heritage preservation. So Western conservation ethics is totally different. So we preserve the historical material. So we try to not disintegrate it or change too much. And on the other side, we have the local societies and expectations of those local societies, which somehow think about cultural heritage totally in a different way. For local people, usually if object is damaged, it's better to put it on the side and make a copy. So they do not really have intention of preserving the original materials. And in such cases, it's very difficult to get the common ground and in such situations. And somehow if they agree for digitization, they usually do it for totally different reasons, not for somehow wish to preserve original materials. So it is why it would be, and what we have been doing all the time, just trying to make people aware and somehow find the reasons for them, which could help to create a wish on their side also to preserve, say, book collections. And in such circumstances, as you can guess, it's very difficult to develop a policy for the protection of cultural heritage in such a situation. So at this point, I thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to Tomasz and Polish National Library for giving me a chance to speak here. And I would be happy, of course, to answer all the questions.
I think that chat works. It did not work for a while. I hope it works now. So if anyone would like to put a question in chat, you're welcome. Hey, Ginny, don't turn your phone because it makes me seasick.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I should have turned it before I turned on. I'm still on my phone. My computer is totally frozen. I can't.
Yeah. No, today is not our lucky day technically, but I hope it will all sort out somehow. Just
so, Toma, where will you post the resources that I provided, since chat is not working?
Sorry for that. I'm not working very well myself. I have a cold, and I don't know. Can anyone check if the chat is working? Because I've put the resources there. So please, can anyone? Yeah, okay. They seem to be working, and there are some people who have reported that the resources are there, so they can be copied. Okay. Just for a moment, I would like to try to share my screen for a while. And it seems to work this time. So we've been here, the conservation approach in digitization projects. This is a photograph from Ukraine. I'm trying to make you attend, all of you being my guests, of the situation in the Ukrainian libraries, which are being, some of them at least, being destroyed by the war which is going on there. So you never, I guess, can be prepared fully for this kind of situations from the conservation point of view. And I hope you will not have to. So this is what I wanted to show you. You can always try to help. I'm asking you to help the Ukrainian libraries and Ukraine itself if you can. And I hope the war ends as soon as possible. So, getting back to the today guests, please, are there questions? Did someone have a question ready to put in the chat? Then please do. Jeanne, you spoke about treating your books as your children, somewhat.
To put a personal touch on the collection, because really in libraries, it is the librarians, the conservators, everyone who works in a library. We are the voice for the collections, in the same way that when a baby can't speak, we look at their condition. Are they crying? Do they need a clean diaper? What do they need? In the same way, without speaking, they communicate. And our collections do the same, I would say. And so to really take ownership of being the voice for the collection, I think is something that anyone working in a library or an archive or a museum can do. Whether it's for scanning, whether it's for protecting it in a disaster, whether it is for hiding it to keep it safe, whatever.
Like in not allowing access for the readers, in some cases, I guess. I would also like you to, maybe both of you, to maybe your answers will be different. There is doctors. It used to be rule: first, do no harm. Is it sensible to use that approach before digitization, when you decide whether to digitize or not?
Well, I think it depends. As we heard from Agnieszka, this is an opportunity, and she may not have this manuscript, she may not have these pages again in her possession to document. And in that case, if there would be some damage, still it would have to be the most important thing to capture as much as possible if you think you will never be able to see it again. And I certainly understood that and admire those projects going on in Tibet. In a different situation, there might be a reason to not digitize something until it can be conserved, if there is that as a possibility in the nearer future. But I give the floor to Agnieszka.
Yes, I fully agree. However, you know, I always think that, yes, of course, I would say that we should not harm. And I can see in our case, it's kind of course, we are trying to do simply our best. Yeah. And I don't think we are harming those books. However, of course, if we have to quickly to flatten it somehow, and it's kind of we have to. It's not possible. We are not following Western rules. Of course, we do not have a gloves because it would not make any sense, right? And we have to somehow make our work accessible and somehow understandable by local people. Yeah. So they have to feel, first, the most important thing, they have to feel that they can do the same. And it's important to show them just a basic rule, what to not do, for example, yeah, like in this case of some ideas they may have. You cannot really predict how creative they can be sometimes in some, you know, ideas how to. So it is from my perspective, I would say, yes, we always, I think that should be rule, do not harm. Yeah. I don't think I would like to, I had ever situations that I had to make decision just to harm objects to digitize it. No, it's simply, they are in such a condition. So we cannot, the problem is rather that we cannot really improve it, yeah, because we do not have a time for this. So that's the rather problem, but we are not harming those objects. So of course there are plenty of difficult decisions, like maybe on a side of this, like I put in the end to take the objects from the cave, yeah. It's that's the different story, because yes, maybe who knows? It's difficult to say if those Westerners which made decision to take those objects out, it's for good or for bad. Really, it only time can show. Yeah, you cannot predict the fate of the collection in this way. So those situations are problematic, I would say. But just like basic measures from the practicalities, how to photograph them, I can't see. Yes, I should. This approach is very valid. Yeah, just do not harm objects.
Agnieszka, I have a question for you. There is very common practice in Egypt, I hear, of grave robbers or people finding artifacts and trying to sell them in the black markets. Does that happen in Nepal as well?
Yes, unfortunately, of course, there is I mentioned that there is a problem with security, and usually the places where, you know, the statues or collections are monasteries or private homes, or so they are not really secure, yeah, in any way, because and it happens unfortunately that some, you know, monasteries are robbed, and then after a couple of years, those art objects can be found on some auctions, or it happened already. But as I said, it is why I think personally that it's very important to digitize those objects and to make them available, because in such a situation, then local people can claim their ownership. Yeah. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult how they prove. They know, but it's not written, right? So, and they were even from not the mountains, it's the one thing, even more difficult, but even from the National Archives in Kathmandu, they also had some years ago the problems that couple of volumes disappeared. Yeah. And they then somebody found it exactly at the art market. So it, unfortunately, it's happening, but that makes, I think, our work even more kind of important. But it's, I have to also say that it's not always seen that way by local communities always, because sometimes they feel like better they say nothing and where it is, so nobody will come. But the reality shows that it does not really protect anything, right? So.
Mm. And this cutout miniature drawing, do you have any idea if what was done, it could have been done by a local person or the tourist?
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for this question. It's interesting point, because exactly in most cases to Western persons it looks like, oh, it's example of vandalism, right? So that it's cut out and somebody must have stolen this. But it's not always the case. Exactly, it's the cultural differences. So I've heard also many examples like this was reported by High Lamas. So because the books are religious objects which are kind of admired and kind of treated sometimes like talismans. So it happens that local people just cut out the miniatures and keep it, for example, in the talismans. Yeah, so it's not always in many cases, yes, it is the act of vandalism, but not always. It can be also done by local people, and it's clear from talking to lamas and somehow from their memories, they exactly memorize that. Once I remember such a case that in childhood he remembers that exactly this and this lama took this miniature with him and he carries this to this day, something like this. So it means that both ways. Yeah.
And Tomas,
Yes,
I would like
probably.
to just add one thing, and that is that there are videos by another pack in Qatar about trafficking. And I believe that those are available on their website. They had a lawyer, they had 4 sessions about trafficking of art materials in the Middle East. And so I can send you that link and you can add that, except my computer is frozen. But after this session, I can send to you and you can send to the people who registered.
Everyone, please follow up on this. I'll put on in the chat link in a moment. This will be to the webpage of the National Library of Poland. And I've already promised that the recordings will be put there. And they are not put there yet, but before the end of May, we'll have 3 recordings on the website from the first 3 seminars. And please follow this page because it will be also containing the additional resources and links. It's a mixed bag, Polish and English, but we are in, it's a work in progress. And if you allow me, I will show an example of different situation. And please let me know if you can see the illustrations clearly. It is
Yeah.
manuscript from the medieval manuscript from the Western world. And some poor soul has cut out the illumination. And now the technology, namely IIIF, allows to joining the images if they happen to be made available in the digital libraries. So the place where the illumination was and the illumination are both online, but in different libraries. But they can be joined now thanks to the technology. And I hope that it will be also possible for those manuscripts you're working on, Agnieszka. If there are no questions in the chat, and I see none, we should be calling it a day for today. Thank you very much, Jeanne. Thank you very much, Agnieszka.
Thank you very much.
I would like to thank all the guests who have gone through my sore throat, technical difficulties, and all the rest. And thank you. And you're welcome on the 9th of June. Agnieszka will not be with us because I hear that she will be in Nepal again.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So good luck there.
Maybe in next one.
Yeah, sure. I really am grateful for your both talks. You have approached the subject from such different angles that I think that it was the best webinar yet. Thank you very much. If you have questions or requests for future webinars, have a look at my email address is in the chat. The recording will be put online at the link which is in the chat. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you and get well soon.
Yes, get well soon and goodbye. Thanks to all the
Goodbye.
people who were online and were patient with our technical issues. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Bye.
sorry. Thank you for watching this webinar in a series of open webinars on digitization. You can see my email address on screen, and there are more recordings of past webinars at the Warsaw IFLA PAC at National Library site. You can see the link to them at the address on screen. You can enjoy my, what's her name? Lady with an ermine, with the ermine. It's from the hand of Leonardo da Vinci, so I guess that's the most valuable painting in Poland. Enjoy. I'm not switching the camera then.